Okay, well then, I think we should get started. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
All righty. Well, welcome everybody to the August 18th, 2022 meeting of the Housing and Community Development Committee. And I declare that we have a quorum. And first we have our usual housekeeping motions. So if someone would make a motion to suspend the rules so we can participate in this meeting.
I will move suspension of the rules.
Thank you.
For virtual participation.
Thanks.
I'll second.
Great, thanks. And Anna, you want to do a roll call?
Sure. Councilmember Ravel,
Aye.
Kathy Feingold,
Aye.
Hugo Rodriguez,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
and Joanne Salome.
Joanne, you're on mute.
Yeah. We saw her say yes.
Okay,
Oh, you did?
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And I have a motion to approve the minutes of our July 19th meeting.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay. So were there any corrections or comments about the minutes? Then we are ready for a roll call on that one.
Councilmember Ravel,
Aye.
Joanne Salome,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Hugo Rodriguez,
Aye.
Kathy Feingold,
I was not at the last meeting, so I'll recuse.
okay, motion passes.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So now on to our business. So our biggest item, I guess, tonight is the substantial amendment to the 2021 action plan to reallocate funds. And today is the end of the 30-day public comment period on that substantial amendment. So staff, do we have any comments?
We do not currently have anybody signed up for public input on the 2021 action plan amendment. There is somebody signed up for regular public comment that will happen at the usual time at the end of the meeting. If anybody wish to provide any comment, they can raise their hand. Using the feature at the bottom of their screen, there's a little raise hand feature. And it doesn't look like that's the case. So
Okay.
As of right now, we do not have any comment.
We
Great.
didn't get any by email or snail mail or anything like that either. This
Okay,
is not really a barn burner of a
right.
amendment since it's just kind of reallocating.
Yeah, moving money around. That's right. Okay. Well, then let's move on to actually a motion on this substantial amendment. And this would be, I need somebody to make a motion to amend the fiscal year 2021 action plan to reallocate $135,104.48 of unexpected Cdbg administration funds to the livable communities goal, and to transfer $147,865.75 of unobligated NSP2 program income to Cdbg's housing goal. So would someone make that motion?
So moved. So
And
moved.
I actually, if I may correct the number, the correct number for an SP2 is $148,234.
Huh, okay.
And just so you know what that is, it's the interest that has accrued on the account since the first of the year. So
Okay.
we are being very precise in what
You
we're
certainly are.
transferring.
Right, yeah. So I don't know, staff, do you have any comments to make, or do committee members, do you have any questions before we have our vote? It's all
Nope.
pretty straightforward. We're happy to have the money, happy to be able to spend it. So, okay, then could we have a vote on that motion, please?
We need someone to second it.
Whoops.
Oh,
I'll
Second.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Ravel,
Aye.
Joanne Salome,
aye.
Kathy Feingold,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns,
Aye.
Hugo Rodriguez.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Great. Okay, thanks, everybody. And then this will go to council on September 12th, right? Okay, great. So now we're going to be talking about our CDBG funded alleys. And there was some information in our packet. Oops, here we go.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little too quick.
Okay.
I'm gonna go through a very quick slideshow. There was information. Are you able to see my
Yes.
slides? Because I have two
Right.
screens.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So there was some information in the packet that was included. There was a memo from city staff regarding the 9th Ward alley, as well as a little a little map of where the alley was. And then there was a chart as well of all the different CDBG eligible alleys, just for context, with pricing associated with it. I'm going to skip through this because you already voted. It was just a reminder of what the 2021 action plan changes were. So I'm going to skip through that and go right to the alley. So if you remember last month, we had a conversation around what the current and historical process for selecting an alley has been. And we kept this slide just to kind of remember the rotation that we've been on so far. So this year for 2023 would be usually a 9th Ward alley that would be selected based on this process. Doesn't mean that we have to stick to this process, but that's what historically has been used. So right now, what we're looking to discuss tonight is, ideally, it would be great if we could prioritize and agree on a prioritization of the top most important alley to pave through the rest of the remainder of the consolidated plan, which means through 2024. The reason for that is it allows us to make sure that we have our priorities that are in the plan and that are kind of set. It doesn't mean we can't change our mind, but that means that should there be any changes with the low moderate income maps, with the CDBG map, or any kind of changes in eligibility, we'd still be able to do the alleys with CDBG funding without having to do a lot of very cumbersome administrative work and surveys and bother the residents to show that indeed that alley is eligible based on their income specifically in that area. So that's the hope for the conversation tonight. So usually what we're looking at, so we're talking about 2023 alley and 2024. Usually we obviously don't have the final grant amounts because we won't have them until next year. The typical CDBG grant is around 1.6 to 1.8 million. And historically, funding for alley paving is coming from the livable community goal, and it's usually about 35 to 38% of that total award. It's historically what the committee has been allocating. That could change, but we're trying to provide you a little bit of context. What that essentially means is that between $560,000 to $684,000 is usually available yearly for a project like this for this goal. And that's used often for alley paving, sidewalk improvements, other public infrastructure improvement. If you remember last year, we voted for the electrification of the parks, and as well, nonprofit facilities improvement. We've talked about that a little bit. We're going to be opening application this year for nonprofit facilities improvements. And there's a good chance that next year, because we're opening the application this year, there's a good chance that they're going to be doing the work. So we might do it in a couple years, but it may or may not happen next year based on what's needed and what applications we get. So that's to give you the kind of context around the selection of the alleys and what we're talking about.
Mhm.
As far as the selection, you have different options. There is the 9th Ward alley that has been highlighted by the staff memo as part of the regular rotation, which is the Linden Custer alley. It's the last alley in the 9th Ward. And it has been reviewed with the council member Eric Harris. You could also decide to look at doing the alley that is around the living room, around Mulford and Elmwood in the 8th Ward. And you could decide as well that maybe both of those alleys are a priority and they could be both potentially done in 2023. Additionally, for 2024, we also have other options. There is the usual rotation, which would be a 2nd Ward alley. There's 3 options, but one of the alley has been deemed more of a priority based on the current state of the alley and the number of calls and the kind of traffic it gets. And I'll have to check my notes because we just heard about that an hour or 2 ago. Yeah. And then there's the option of doing that 8th Ward alley and going out of rotation. If we think this is, we cannot do it in 2023 and need to do something else. So those are kind of the options. One thing to note is what's needed by October and ideally sooner is kind of a final decision around which alley would be done in 2023, because that is when city staff needs to be able to work on some of the engineering works. And that's what, based on timeline, if we want something to happen in 2023, that's when they need a decision. You could, as a committee, decide to prioritize or say all 3 alleys are a priority and we'll see what we do for budget. But if you make a kind of decision on saying those top 3 alleys are important, then it could be in the record and then we can decide later on what we do based on funding. But at least it's in the record. And then if the maps change, we don't have an issue with that. So I'm not sure if it was very clear, but
We'll see now.
I'll take any questions.
Okay, yeah, Councilmember Reed, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to jump in, and of course, both as the council member for the 8th Ward, but also, someone who's really invested in the success of the living room. I want to advocate that we prioritize doing the alley adjacent to the living room. I think it'll make conditions there more conducive to the work that is going on, and less likely that I think it'll make it more conducive to the work there. And so I'd really like to advocate for us to try to pave this alley in 2023.
And I may add that something I forgot to mention, we did get feedback from the Public Works team that should we decide to do that alley, they would prefer to do the alley after the construction is completed, so that it doesn't get damaged from all the trucks, any kind of traffic that's associated with construction.
Right.
And I think, excuse me, I'm just going to interject. Usually our alley paving starts in July or August at the earliest. And I believe, I'm hoping that the living room construction would be done, at least the heavy stuff that is what I think is Councilmember Reed's point is good, because the access to the living room building will be, especially for anyone with a disability or who wants to be able to use the accessible the entrance, is going to be off of the alley in the rear, because that's the only part that can be reasonably made accessible. So, right. But I think the timing would work out based on when we traditionally start our alley paving projects. So I just wanted to, but it is a good concern on that. We don't want to have them going on. We'd have to manage the construction so we don't have them kind of like, oh, we're trying to do construction and get trucks in and out
Yeah.
with materials when they're paving an alley. So
Okay, no, that's helpful information. Ugo, you have your hand up?
Oh, sorry about that. I needed to unmute. Yes, I have questions about what made that alley at Linden and Custer the target for this money. I had the opportunity to drive by. I was curious to see. Pardon me. And unfortunately, I didn't know about the other two options that could be also in play. So I was not able to go see them physically. But I did drive by this. And on the south end of it, it seems like there is some not excessive luxury, but it's a luxury condominium, if you will, or townhomes. And then on the north end of the alley, there is an empty, what it looks to be a vacant building that is a kind of a warehousey type. And then there is also another commercial building closer to the north end. And then there what it looks like public housing, perhaps, or hot housing on the south end next to the condominiums. And then there are 5 dwellings that look to me to be 2 flats. And that's it. So it didn't look to me like maybe is a census tract eligible type of community. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but it didn't look to me like it's one of the most neediest areas in Evanston that probably should get this money instead. And to top it, to one side of the alley, the complete side of the alley is the train track. So really, there is very little beneficiaries to this paving, and both north end and south end are paved a little bit. I mean, they have some concrete paving on both ends, but I'm not understanding what the concept of giving funds to alley paving for such a small population, if you will. That is my main question. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't have anything to say about the other 2 potential sites where alley paving, because if we had it, I missed it. And my apologies, Marion, for missing those 2 other sites. But I would like to at least take a look and have a little bit more of a sense of what is it that we're doing, in my mind, at least. That's my comment.
Yeah. So Marion, yeah, I'm sure you can answer, but basically its eligibility is based on its being in that census tract, right? Is that
right?
Yeah.
So essentially the alley is selected based on the low moderate income map. And so if it is in a block, in a census tract that is eligible based on the maps that we receive, then it's eligible for the money. As far as Evanston goal, I think this is the last alley in the 9th ward, and this year was historically a 9th ward year. We're not saying that this is a requirement. This has been a historical process, but the committee can decide to do something different if they'd like to. But essentially, if an alley was to be done in the 9th ward, this is the last alley that needs to be repaved that would be Cdbg eligible. And the location in the alley is what makes it eligible in the specific area it's at. It's not as detailed as going building by building to see what income are each residents at. So it's in a slightly larger area. So yes, that's pretty much, yeah, this one is the last one that's eligible in the 9th ward.
Chair, if I may jump in.
Sure.
Thank you, Ugo, for looking into that. I would just really advocate, particularly in light of that, when we put this was a process that was developed a while ago. I don't know if this process was developed with a true equity lens in mind. and really thinking about the living room. And as Sarah noted, this is going to make it easier for folks to who have disabilities and other mobility challenges to get in and out of that building. I would just really advocate that maybe we prioritize that alley for that purpose this year. And, it does feel nice to think this is the last Cdbg alley in the 9th Ward. And there's a bit of completeness there, but certainly I think, looking at, using that equity lens to prioritize folks with disabilities, I think makes a lot of sense in this instance.
Okay. Councilmember Burns, you've had a hand up for a while.
If we considering the normal order, the 8th Ward would be in 2024.
Mhm.
Is that true?
Yes, because next year would be
9th Ward.
Historically
Yeah.
the 2nd ward, no, the 9th ward, and then after that would be the 2nd ward. So the 8th ward would be 2025.
Okay, I see. Okay, and then what did Councilmember Hedekade say about this particular alley, or the order
he has discussed it with Public Works, and he was in favor of this alley being repaved.
So Marion, could you remind us how much money we normally spend each year on these Cdbg alleys?
So it really depends, because if you look at the chart, we have some alleys that can go up to $400,000, but the majority of the alleys are $220,000. I believe last year we ended up doing 2 alleys, so we spent a little bit more than usual. But the budget, generally speaking, for community living, for livable community, is around $560 to $650. We'll say it's a rough calculation based on estimate, but we can estimate that we'll have about $560 to $684,000. So it's good to be conservative here. Last year we got a little bit lower of a Cdbg grant, so probably staying towards the $560 to $600 is probably best. Alley paving is not the only project that is used under this goal, but it's usually the biggest chunk of spending.
Right.
Yeah, and then there's always a little bit of additional funding here and there, depending on what program income we get or anything else as well.
Yeah. But so it's conceivable that we would be considering spending some of this money on sidewalks, for example. Or
yes.
Sarah, you
And I had one last question.
Sure.
And the alley near the, I don't even know what we're calling it anymore.
Living room?
The living room, that's the Mulford Elmwood one?
It is. Yes.
Okay. So that's 240. Okay.
Yes.
Projected. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Sarah.
I just wanted to make the point that both the living room alley and the 9th Ward alley are super expensive alleys.
Right.
So we could consider saying that ideally both of those would be done. We are putting a lot of proportionately more money into sidewalks this year than we ever have recently with Cdbg, and we're doing the entire stretch of sidewalks. Well, it's putting in sidewalk along a part of Foster Street near Fleetwood Jourdain, where there wasn't sidewalk. That's a real improvement in fixing that. And then replacing the sidewalk all the way from Brown Avenue all to Green Bay, or at least to Ashland or whatever. I think the Green Bay part is pretty solid. I mean, the last block there is going to be fixed. But so that's a really significant sidewalk improvement we're doing in the 5th Ward.
Right.
And so, I think possibility would be to, say we at least want our engineers to do the planning for both of those. And then we can, as Marion said, not proceed with both of them in 1 year. But if we choose one and then we could do both, then it's going to be hard to add them on. So, I expect we will pave both of them at some point in the relatively near future. So, it might be a good consideration to just consider, saying and again, it's not a final anything. Say we have 2 alleys, or we want to consider 2 alleys, if that's the committee's wish. Now, obviously, technically, we could look at all those other alleys. I'm not necessarily recommending that, but I think that, and then, I think that we can ask Public Works to come back to us, maybe, even to say for our 2025 through 2029 con plan, which we'll be working on in 2024, which isn't that far away, to really, we'll probably have a new map and we will have to do a reassessment. So, Marion's point that we might want to prioritize any alleys that we think we might want to pave for the next 2 years in this con plan is a good one, because we did find out when they changed the maps the last time, and we had to do a survey to get the Nathaniel McDaniel alley up, to get its eligibility back. If we had a statement and a vote from our committee saying these are prioritized alleys we want to do in this con plan period, it, again, as Marion says, protects that ability to not have to go and do a survey. So, and is the rotation the exact thing that we should always be doing going forward? I'm not sure either, but I think that we could then maybe ask, our Public Works does look in each, when they do look at each ward as they come up, they try to find the worst alley in the ward that's eligible. And so, Ugo, one of the reasons this alley in the 9th ward is that's the only eligible one, as Marion said, based on the current map. I do want to make a comment that sometimes the alleys that have, it looks to me like there's a significant amount of rental on the side that is next to the train tracks. The townhomes are on the Custer Street side, but the other side appears to me to have quite a bit of rental. And if you have rental that is not particularly upscale or high income, you generally do not get a 50-50 alley paving through, because that requires, the percentage of votes. And so I do think this would not be, based on my somewhat limited, but remembering what I've heard from Public Works, it is generally home alleys with a lot more home ownership, with larger yards and things like that, where they, are more likely to petition for their own alleys to be paved.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Kathy, you've had your hand up.
Thanks. And I don't know why my screen is so dark. I guess my question is, Marion was saying that this is the last eligible alley in the 9th ward, which suggests to me that a lot of work has been done in the 9th ward, or perhaps most of the ward is non-eligible. It's hard to say, and I wonder if the 8th ward has had as much done in the 8th ward as has been done in the 9th ward. So I guess it's not even, because there's potentially fewer eligible census tracts in the 9th ward, but just something to think about. And I'm not against the idea of putting them both in the plan.
Mhm. Yeah,
And Kathy, my understanding is that it's the second thing you said, that it's not a large eligibility area in the 9th ward, is my understanding, than it is in the 8th and 2nd, and especially the 5th, obviously.
right.
Okay. That suggests something as well.
That is a very likely
Mhm.
component of this, yes. I can guarantee that the first part is not also correct, because we know what the rotation has been, but I don't know what happened maybe 30 years ago. But yes, a big part of this is the fact that there's not a lot of tracks that are eligible.
Yeah. Councilmember Reed, you have your hand up still?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was up from earlier, but
Okay.
again, I'll just chime in. The 8th Ward alley, I think is really important.
Mhm. Yeah. And
I,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. I do want to add that I did get the information around the 2nd ward alley, and the 2nd ward alley that has been highlighted as the most in need of repair would be the one that's north of Lake and east of Darrow.
So this the second one on that list.
Yeah, it looks like that's the one that's 290,000.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yes. So that, yeah, that would be the 2nd ward alley that city staff would recommend if we were to choose a 2nd ward alley.
Mhm.
And that would be for 2024, correct?
I will be for whatever year you would decide, but based on the historical rotation, yes.
Mhm. Yeah. Ugo, another question, comment?
Actually, it's a comment. Thinking about rotation and priority makes me think that perhaps it'll be a good idea to have a master plan of sorts. I know that things change year to year and things happen, but it'd be a good idea to have a more priority, more equitable way of distributing the monies that we have access to for alley paving and sidewalks. To me, my main concern with this alley is that it only impacts 10 or 12 households. And in my mind, being a tenant or being a homeowner doesn't weigh as much. I think that it's more important that we service a larger possible number of people than an alley that has no one side, because that's the train track, and then very few homes that perhaps will fall into a category of moderate to low income in the area. And I'm not doubting that this is part of the census tract map, but it's I'm sure there are areas that needed more than these 10 homes. That's my 2 cents on that, and I'm still troubled by that. That it's so few beneficiaries of the money that we don't have a lot of, and instead of bringing it to an area that has a denser population and more people will benefit from it. That's it.
So could I just ask, Sarah, do you remember, is there some multifamily there? Are we talking about more than 10 households, or is that?
There, I kind of did my census on that, Chair Ravel, and there are 2 flats.
Okay.
There are 2, there is a duplex with 2 houses on it that look like subsidized housing, and there is a commercial building.
Right. Okay.
That it's a small commercial building that it could be a residence. And then on each end, on the north end, there is a vacant property. At least that's what it appeared to me when I drove by. And on the south end of that alley, there are townhomes and condominiums on the back of those 4 townhomes on the front. And those have paved the alley to the access to their garage already. So we're talking about maybe 12 families, 13 families altogether
Mhm.
And I did a count of how many, unless there are basement units that I don't know, but if they're garden units or attic units, I couldn't account for those. But it looked to me like 12 dwellings, 13 at the most.
Okay. Councilmember Burns, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just saying another thing to consider is and I'm not sure from what Sarah said earlier if this alley would be eligible for the 50/50 program, but if it were, sometimes the fact that there's a train line on the other end can actually hurt the residents because they have to shoulder more of the cost because they can't. Typically, you have people on both sides, so you have properties on both sides of the alley to take on the cost of repaving the alley. In this situation, it actually hurts the residents because they can't share the cost with properties on the other side.
I don't think that's how in this instance that would work.
I'm just saying that's typically how the 50/50 program works. Is everybody whose property
but I think
abuts
when
the alley?
government abuts the other side, we pick up the slack.
Is that how that will work?
Well, for the 50/50 program, we'd have to get the train folks to
Yeah,
agree,
'cause we don't own that.
agree to the project, I think.
I know in the past when District 65 has abutted an alley, because I used to serve on the Board of Local Improvements. I believe the city shouldered the cost, maybe the district, but whatever it is, the taxpayers aren't paying more than their fair share. It's still calculated based on how much of the alley they abut.
Right.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is that you still have to get that other party to agree to it, which they may not. Right. So I'm really thinking about the whole thing together. You have to get that property owner, which is not the city, to say, yes, we want to shoulder this cost. They may say, look, it's fine. Like, you don't have any issue with it. And to Ugo's point, it doesn't really impact that many residents. So we're good. And then, of course, if the city wants to do it, you can go ahead and shoulder that cost, but the actual property owner may not. So, and again, I'm supportive of, moving forward with both if we can. I think absent some other way to look at this, I just want to make sure we don't fall too much out of order. So I'm fine moving forward personally with 9 and 8, but until we come up with some other process, I think we should just continue the order, because I think certainly in the 2nd and 5th ward, there are alleys that need to get done. And because the fact that there's only one remaining alley in the 9th ward, I don't think and I know that may change when they come up with, when they reanalyze the block areas or group areas, whatever they call. But I'm not sure this is worth discussing too much further. I would say if there's a way to do both of them at the same time, let's do that, and let's continue the next year with the 2nd ward and maybe a 5th ward as well, but certainly 2nd ward.
Right. Yeah. Sarah, another last comment.
Just recalling when we last did an alley that was on Rummel, I think it was just oh gosh, am I getting the right street now? But it was that backed up to the yellow line. The CTA did not pay anything. And so it was a case where, the city would pick up 50%, but it wouldn't pick up it would still be against fewer homeowners or apartment owners, as Councilmember Burns said, just because you have less density. So it does make those alleys rather difficult to get paved through the 50/50. And I want to apologize, when I was first looking at my map, I was trying to look at the map better. And Ugo, when you were saying, I realized I was looking at the wrong alley. I was looking at the one south. And so I was looking at an inaccurate, but I do think that the actual one would be a difficult one to get through a 50/50, because most of the time when you have 2 flats and they're rental, those 2 flats are not creating enough revenue for the people to want to to pay that 50/50. It's very hard to get alleys that are heavily rental
Right.
paved.
So we have talked about this quite a while. So why don't we have a vote? I want someone to make a motion for alleys for 2023, and then we can come back and talk about 2024. Good.
Yeah, I will move that we pave both the 8th Ward alley in adjacent to the living room on Elmwood and the last 9th Ward alley.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Ravel,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Joanne Salome,
Aye.
Kathy Feingold,
Aye.
Hugo Rodriguez,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, great. So let's talk now about what we want to have planned for 2024, and so the next if we're following the rotation, Ward 2 would be the next. I thought there was some mention at our last meeting that when you look at the sheer number of alleys that are eligible, there are 13 in the 5th Ward.
Right.
Yes.
And
So,
only 3 left in the 2nd Ward. So I just throw out there, the idea that
I looked at that as well, because that's one thing I was considering suggesting, but then I started looking at the block group, and it looks like a lot of the alley, like about half of the alleys that are counting against that 13 counts for Ward 5 are actually in 8093, which is a ward that tends to show much lower income due to a high student population. So if you look at the block groups that are 8092, and look at those numbers and compare that to the 8th Ward and 2nd Ward numbers, it's actually pretty even.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm fine with just taking I think Marion said that the second Ward alley was recommended. I'm personally fine making a motion for that and doing that for 2024.
Should we tentatively look at two alleys, just so we've got them kind of identified? Is that, Sarah, you have your hand up?
I do remember Carlos Sutton at one point saying he thought his alley would never get paved because it backed up to ComEd substation or something like that. Is that it? Do you recall that, Councilmember Burns?
Yeah, no, that's being done by
That's being done through the other thing, through okay, I just wanted to confirm
through the
that,
Waste
because I remember
Transfer
you saying
State
something about
and
that.
Settlement Fund, yeah.
And I just wanted to raise that was something that had been brought up in a meeting, but I was pretty sure it was being taken care of.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, it's been taken care of.
So should we be having a motion for 2024, or just general discussion? What it?
Can you remind us of the choices again?
Sure. Yeah, so in the 2nd Ward, I think it was the one that was north of Lake and east of Darrow.
yes, essentially, because you just approved the living room alley in the 8th Ward and the Linden Custer alley in the 9th Ward. The third option was the 2nd Ward, which is indeed the north of Lake, east of Darrow alley. That's having 3 alleys for 2 years is probably enough for now. I would be happy, if we want to discuss more, to come back in September with a potential 2nd alley for 2024, maybe in the I believe it would be the 5th Ward by then.
Right.
To add to our list, just so we have 2 alleys per, we have 4 priority alleys on the record, if the committee wishes to have that on the record.
And the
And yet I would
second,
actually, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
is the 2nd Ward alley the one you just mentioned that all the calls have come in about, or no?
Yes, the second ward alley, the north of Lake, east of Darrow, is the one that has the most calls, the most traffic, and seems to be higher need.
Okay.
That's based on
Thank you.
Public Works input. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay,
And Chair, I was just going to quickly say that I would actually prefer a bit more time to talk to city staff as well as community before we identify the next Fifth Ward alley. So I think coming back, Marion, I don't know if you said next month to discuss adding a fourth potentially in 2024 is a good course of action.
okay, yeah, that's a good plan, yeah. So can we have a motion then for that alley in the second ward, north of Lake and east of Darrow,
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Okay, and can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Ravel,
Aye.
Joanne Salome,
Aye.
Kathy Feingold,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Hi.
Hugo Rodriguez,
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Great. And before we move away from this topic, I'd just like to note that there are 3 alleys that are designated as not in the 7th ward, but they are in the 7th ward. The 2 alleys that are shown as 6th ward are actually in the 7th ward. And one of the 2 alleys in the 1st ward is in my ward as well. So not that I think we're looking at doing any of those soon, but I just like the record to show that there are 5 alleys in the 7th ward that are technically eligible.
I will mention that to Chris and work
Great.
with him on making sure the wards are updated there.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so now we're ready for an update on our inclusionary housing wait list.
Yes, we are. I'm going to share my screen again.
Okay,
You're all able to see the right screen with the waitlist slide.
yes.
Okay, so essentially I have just one slide for this. This is kind of a companion to the attachment, the report that was in your packet. So the update here is a 6 months update. We usually provide this committee an update twice a year. And this is from January through July. The waitlist has been stable. This is the first time since the waitlist was implemented that we're not seeing a growth. Essentially, we're still at a 560 household. And the reason for that is we did get new sign up. We got 70 new sign up, but they were duplicates and removals that were done when the waitlist was updated earlier it was earlier this year as well, last fall. So that's one good thing. A few things to keep in mind. So if you look at the charts in your packet, you'll see there's some gray area on the charts. And those usually highlights the income level that are 0 to 30% and 30 to 50% of AMI. These type of units usually require subsidies. The units that usually would come from the IHO will usually be 60 to eventually 80 to 100% AMI, but the bulk of it is 60% AMI. So it's something to keep in mind. With that said, if you look at the chart, we have 80% of the household on the wait list that are below 50% AMI. So where we're seeing the most demand is not necessarily going to be affected by non-subsidized units. We have about 109 households on the wait list that would be eligible for HO units that are between 60 and 100% AMI. So that's quite a smaller chunk from the 560 households. The mix of the household has been pretty stable over time. We're seeing about 80% of the wait list that's a household of 1 to 3 people, so fairly smaller household. The existing unit mix is 82% of studio to 1 bedroom and 97% total of studio to 2 bedrooms. So there's still a need for larger 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. But it's good to see that there's a very large percentage of the wait list that is smaller households that would need small units. And then one thing to note is the first time that we were able to start collecting demographic information on the current tenants of IHO units. And that's showing in your chart. Now, keep in mind, this is only the household that wish to participate in this. They're not required to. But we were showing, I believe, and I need to pull my report, but I believe we were showing about 53% of Black and African American households amongst the tenants, 38% of white households, and about under 10% of Asian households. And we were also showing about 11% of Hispanic households. So the program is serving a majority of minority households, which is great to see. Another item of note, SEPA, our partner that's managing the waitlist, is going to be doing some informational session about the program, and they'll be at the main library on September 15th, as well as the Robert Crown Library on September 20th at 6 o'clock to talk about the waitlist, talk about how to get on the waitlist and what the program is about. So if you're able to help share that information, that would be wonderful. I am happy to pull the report and see if there's any questions. I don't know if you can see the report right now. So essentially here, those highlights are where you would see the 0 to 30 and 31 to 50 that show what requires subsidy versus no.
And so where would those residents obtain a subsidy?
So an example would be the Hack building that is going to be at, I want to say 1900 Emerson or 1900 Sherman, that's providing some a number of units that's going to be below the 50%, or if they have they apply to vouchers, or if there's I believe the Evergreen building that was built as well was providing a number of units that were at the 30% income level. So there's different ways. Usually it's a mix of solutions there, but the IHO units in private development usually isn't enough for that income level.
Yep, Sarah?
Yeah, what we do is the wait list, we do try to keep quite broad, as SEPA has said, because some people may not come up for a while, and we don't want to have, people, sometimes people's income rises and they are then actually, it isn't exactly what it was when we put them on the wait list. But when we had the Anne Rainey Apartments open, we referred local residents that we knew that had that were at that 30% and that 50%. We referred them to the project-based wait list that the Housing Authority was doing. So it's valuable to us to have them because when we have many of our low-income housing tax credit projects also have the project-based support, and then we can kind of refer a chunk of people to those, which enables us to get people who are already looking for housing in Evanston onto those wait lists without them having to go and find them completely separately on their own, which is one of the biggest challenges about trying to find affordable housing.
Right.
So, and we also remember in some of our earliest developments under the first revision of the IHO, that both the Avador and the Albion are not all at 60%. They have some that are 80%. And so, we're always there's always some play in what we are in, we have a wait list that in some cases we may not have units right at that minute, but we still can then watch and help and refer if something comes up that we see that they would be eligible for.
Right. Yep. So committee questions or comments about this information? So So you say that we're steady at 570 households. Is that sort of the maximum we've ever had on the list, or
Yes, I believe so, because we've been growing that list. I haven't seen ever, I actually asked twice to make sure they could check the numbers because I was surprised. So I wasn't sure it was actually right. So yes, this would be the highest number we've had because the list have been growing pretty much every time we present, and there's more people on the list.
right? Yeah. Well, if there are no questions or comments, then I know you have an update also about our landlord-tenant services.
And this, real quick, this may have been answered already, but I'm just curious to know how we continue to scrub and update the list to make sure
Sure.
people who are in greatest need, but also continuing need, are at the top of the list, towards the top of the list.
So essentially, the list is updated on a yearly basis. SEPA will contact everybody on the list to confirm their situation and to make sure that the list is updated. That's how some of the people on the list were removed, because they either were not interested anymore, they were duplication on the list. As far as the way it works is there's income level. So it's not necessarily being at the top of the list. There's a number of factors that come into play when becoming eligible for units. There's the income level, there's whether they might get contacted, but there's a question of whether they're willing or able to move at the time a unit becomes available. So there's a different type of selection that happens based on the unit that becomes available, the size of the household, their income level, and how they can match. There's also a local preference as well for the units. So that's kind of how they manage the list. But essentially, the people that have been on the list the longest and that meet all the criteria for the unit that become available would be contacted first. Usually they send a contact to a group of people, because obviously the first person may not be interested or available. So they usually go in chunks. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, yeah, thank you.
And if somebody is on the list and couldn't move at that time, they stay there. They aren't bumped off if they have a reason like that. In other words, that's one of the benefits too. It's like, it doesn't mean that, like, oh, you declined a unit. Now, if somebody were to really go and see, I think it's 2 or 3 units and decline all of them. I think that's the point when they get bumped down, because it's kind of like, okay, what are you looking for? I mean, that's really kind of like, there's a point where you have to kind of, Kathy, it looks like you're nodding your head from experience that this is, it's pretty standard. I mean, you try to accommodate all the many things that can come up in people's lives, but, I think everybody's had some people who nothing is ever what they want. And it really just keeps other people from getting into housing as quickly, because you also, when you contact a certain number of people, you give them a certain amount of time, and so you just, it's complicated. It really is.
Yeah. Ugo, you have another question?
I have a couple questions, and one is of the 570. So you keep tabs of who's been there the longest, and do we know how long have they been? That's one question. Two is about how many households do we place in one of these housing units every year, and is the 570 number household numbers or people's number?
Households.
It's households.
Okay.
So it's 560 households, 161 that are Evanston households. We don't keep track of the wait list. SEPA does, and that's a very important distinction, because SEPA, our partner, is administering that wait list. It's really difficult to answer the question about how long they're on the wait list, because it depends on what unit comes up. If you're, and that's what drives which households are going to get placed, essentially. So as far as answering your question around how many households get a unit, that's driven from how many new units become available. There's a very low turnover on those units. Once a household gets an affordable unit, we have really, really low turnover. So it's really driven by how many new units get available, and how many units get available is driven by how many new development with IHO units become available. So this year, so far, there's been very few units. There were 2 units in the Truly building. There's going to be a few more coming up towards the end of the year. However, we have quite a few developments that are coming up that have been delayed that probably would come on the market in 2023. So there'll be probably a little bit more movement next year based on that.
I think it'll be later than 2023. We've got a number of planned developments that are not moving ahead on their original construction plan because of costs and uncertainties in the market. Financing is difficult right now, and getting materials is difficult. So we have some developments that are sitting, waiting out to see if the material costs at least stabilize, because that and the availability. So there's some challenges. So we'll be talking more about that, about the status of the planned developments that have been approved, but are, not that will go to P&D for discussion, just where planned developments are.
Okay.
Was that all your questions, Ugo? Do you have, that's it? Okay.
Thank you.
Shall we move on then to landlord-tenant services?
Sure. Okay. So same thing for the landlord-tenant services. This slide is a companion to the attachment that was in the packet, which is our usual report around the volume of inquiries and the topics that are handled from those calls. What we've seen is a drop in inquiries from the 2020-2021 levels. We're down about 8% and about 200 inquiries to date. We're still showing that more than 90% of the calls are from tenants. And what was interesting, I spent a little time reviewing the topics of the individual calls. And what was really interesting is there is a variety of topics, but the majority of the calls are really about informing callers, whether they're tenants or landlord, about their rights, their duties, and what action to take and how. So a lot of the calls were about a landlord wanting to access the unit excessively and how to address that, providing letters and templates for a tenant to be able to address this in the right way. Lots of question around lease renewals, increases in rent, termination. Can I terminate my lease? Can my landlord not renew me? What are the possibilities here? And some calls as well around neighbor issues and how they can address that and what kind of rights they have or not. Example around noise or smoking or things like that. I was surprised to see there wasn't as many calls around maintenance as I expected. A lot of the question, and it could be due to the timing, but a lot of the questions were mostly around leases and increases. We had a landlord webinar on August 10th that went pretty well. There was a good turnout. We were able to do email blast. The webinar has been now posted on YouTube for everybody to access and watch in their own time. And Anna has another webinar scheduled specifically for tenants this time. That's going to happen late September. The tentative date is September 28th. And we will send you information so you can share far and wide for anybody that wants to join.
Okay.
I'm gonna
So
try to
any questions and comments about that? If not, then we can move on to a staff report, and yeah, one is about the small landlord task force update, Anna. And if you want to say anything more about the workshop too, I mean the coverage of it was really positive. So
Yes, everyone in the call seemed very, very satisfied. They asked a lot of questions.
Mhm.
They were mostly geared towards parts of the lease and also term limits and notification notices. So they were very engaged, which was good.
Mhm.
So we look forward to having this next one be geared towards tenants.
Mhm.
And we're already planning on next year's webinar so we can make even more positive features in the webinar so they can be even more engaged. So yeah, everyone was very happy about it.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right, so now I'll give a quick update on the Small Landlord Task Force. Since last time we met, there has been a lot of positive progress with the task force. So I just wanted to show everyone what the Small Landlord Assistance Program timeline looks like. So on August 2nd, we sent out the survey email, and we also sent messages through social media to be posted. So people could log on and fill out the landlord survey. And for the landlords that did not provide an email or were not in our roster of landlords to be contacted by the email blast, we did send out a mailing. We targeted the mailing by census tract, in the census tract that had landlords of multifamilies, single families, and condos. And we are now expecting to close the survey by September 2nd. So that gives landlords about a month so they can fill out the survey and for us to get some data. And in the time between September 3rd and the 28th, we will be doing a lot of data analysis. And then we want to meet with the task force again on September 28th, October 5th, and October 12th, so we can work through the program design. So we are expecting to bring the full Small Landlord Assistance Program before the Housing and Community Development Committee on October 18th. So like I said, we've sent email blasts, we did a targeted mailing, we did social media and e-news, but we also need your help. So if you could please share this link, it's https://tinyurl.com/Evanston landlord. And please submit the survey. And if there's any landlords or property owners on the call, please forward this information to any of your landlord contacts and colleagues. So far, we've received 41 responses. So that's great, but we want to make sure that we get a big pool of data so we can begin the data analysis and program design. So thank you very much to all of the landlords who have already submitted their responses.
Okay.
Councilmember Reed or Hugo, would you like to add anything?
Not at this time. I think you did a pretty good briefing of where we are. Thanks, Anna.
And does anybody else on the committee have any questions? So I guess Council Member Burns.
Yeah, I was going to say and we may have had something that was sent out already, but if you can send me just a quick write up on it, and I can include it in my newsletter. When is what's the deadline again? Just so I'm clear.
We're expecting to close the survey on September 2nd.
Okay.
So I can send out a quick email.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Now I'll have something going out before the end of this month, and I can get it out.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Sarah.
Thank you. I just wanted to recognize Anna for all her work cleaning up the list to try to get this, I mean, to really get this big mailing. It in total, we have either emailed or snail mailed, how many, 1,900, or is it more than that, Anna?
We emailed around 700. I'm sorry, 1,700, and we mailed 1,400.
So we really are, this will also help get our landlord database cleaned up as we look toward needing that for registration and or licensing. So I want to recognize her work on that. And I also wanted to go back for a minute to the tenant webinar that is being planned. Anna reached out to Northwestern University because we thought, what a great time to get students to find out what they have to do. Right. And regrettably, Tony Kirchmeyer, who has been the main contact that we've had at Northwestern for a number of years, and who has actually done some work to try to help students be aware of their responsibilities, is no longer there. Northwestern is looking to fill that position. So unfortunately, we're not able to really do much to address, to help students coming in think about their responsibilities as a tenant. But that is something we've got on our list for next year. So we start bugging Northwestern really early, and hopefully they will have somebody in that position, because I think even, all of the efforts that we do to do outreach early and educate the students will be beneficial.
Right, definitely.
Yes, and I think it's a good opportunity to let them know their rights and responsibilities as tenants, and also collaborate with Northwestern.
Yeah. Councilmember Burns, do you have another question, or is your hand still just up from before?
It's still up from before. I did have some comments and questions about a previous agenda item, but I can hold off.
We can go back to that.
You want me to go now?
Sure.
Okay. No, I just had questions about the on whether or not MTO, and I would imagine they do, but have a FAQ, if they develop and continue to update their FAQ section of their website, if they have one, just because I would imagine if they're receiving some of the same questions, that it might help to have a FAQ section updated on a regular basis.
Yes, I can reach out to Philip or John Bartlett and see if they have any updates to FAQs. And if they don't, I'll see if we can get one made.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
I was just going to say, some of the questions that came up at the webinar could be, important to include in that FAQ. Yeah, but go ahead, Councilmember Burns.
And then the last thing I was going to say is, if you could reach out to John and also see if they have the ability on their website to live chat with tenants, because just based on my interactions with John and some of the other MTO members, I think sometimes everything doesn't require a planned interview. Some questions can be responded to quickly if they had a mechanism to do so. And I think it would I think it would help us build continue to build a lot of confidence in the program if we can always try to find ways to get people answers as quickly as we can. And I think that's one way to do it, is to explore a live chat feature where someone can quickly ask a question. And if there's a live MTO member that is available to just quickly answer a question for a tenant and landlord, they can do so without having to just, schedule a call. Or so that's something else I'd love if they could either explore putting in place, or maybe they have that ability now. They could be doing it. I'm not sure, but if you could reach out and just ask.
Yes,
That'd be
so
helpful.
we do have check-in meetings with MTO. And we just talked about that in our last check-in meeting. So we did explore some options, and one of them was a chatbot with the most frequently asked questions, so that if someone reaches out to them at off hours, they can still get some information. So that is on their radar, and we'll be working with them to figure out how that could be possible. And also maybe a texting feature. We would have to see what their capacity is, but that's something that just came up in our last meeting. So yeah, you're right on target, Councilmember Burns.
Great.
Perfect. Great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And then an update about the home ARP allocation plan.
Yes. So last time we talked about the Home ARP, or Home American Rescue Plan Act allocation plan. I'm just going to give a quick review of what we talked about last time. So the city of Evanston received close to $1.3 million in Home ARP funds. We have until September of 2030 to spend them. And these go to qualifying populations, which are homeless or at risk of homelessness, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, and other populations where providing assistance would prevent a family from becoming homeless, and also veterans and families that include a veteran family member. So since our last meeting, we met with the Coalition to End Homelessness in Evanston. And we were able to reach all of these organizations in our screen. The Harbor Connections for the Homeless, Interfaith Action, Family Promise, the Moran Center, Cradle to Career, and the Evanston Community Foundation, YOU, and also District 65. And we have also been in contact with the Alliance to End Homelessness in suburban Cook County, specifically with the Continuum of Care. From our meeting on July 27th, and from our contact with the Alliance to End Homelessness Continuum of Care, they all seem to be supporting non-congregate shelter. So if you can go to the next page. So the Alliance to End Homelessness in suburban Cook County and the Continuum of Care have sought out a shelter redesign plan and a vision for shelter for all of suburban Cook County. So not just the city of Evanston, but suburban Cook County as a whole. And they got back the data from that shelter redesign plan and the vision for shelter. And these documents will be available to you in next month's packet. But I just wanted to give a quick overview of them. So the results for the shelter redesign plan and the vision document is that there's a strong need for a more resilient shelter system. So there was a huge loss of pre-pandemic shelters due to COVID-19 and their inability to use the PATS program for congregate shelters. So they had to pivot to hotel shelters due to COVID. And that led to lost contacts with some of the nonprofits, and some of the nonprofits did not have the capacity anymore to house the PADS program. So they identified a shelter redesign plan as a roadmap for homeless crisis response. So this is extremely important to them. And one of the types of shelter that they find it was most beneficial to alleviate homelessness in suburban Cook County is non-congregate shelter. So this is on par with what we heard from the Alliance to End Homelessness and the coalition. So we are exploring non-congregate shelter as one of the options for the use of the home ARP allocation plan. And also we might possibly be able to use a portion of that to fund tenant-based rental assistance. So we need a public notice of no less than 15 calendar days and at least one public hearing, like I said in last time. And public comment will close at the September 20th HCDC meeting. So that's the plan. If anyone has any questions.
Okay. Committee, any questions?
And I just wanted to note that the state of Illinois recently posted its plan. It also includes non-congregate shelter as a high need. And Cook County is just finishing up its, is that right, Anna? They're going to post very soon too. And what's really important is to accomplish these goals is to combine funding from all those different sources. Because so that's part of the real important piece of the puzzle is to do that. So, and then like tonight was the closing of the public comment period for the action plan. Next month will be the closing of the comment period for the home ARP, and then we'll send it to HUD after it goes to council for approval, of course.
Right. Yeah. Councilmember Burns.
No, I just wanted to say, thank you to everyone who has been thinking through this, and that I just wanted to go on record saying I support both recommendations for the non-congregate shelters as well as the tenant-based rental assistance. So good work, and I am in support.
Yep, great. Okay. Well, then I think we're ready for public comment, Marion.
Yes, like usual, if anybody in the audience would like to provide public comment, you can raise your hand and I will let you speak. I do want to mention that we had one person that signed up for public comment. I don't believe they are on. It was Miss Katie Egan. She was in favor of the home ARP plan, but I don't believe she's attending today. And it looks like we have one person from the public, Ms. Payton, that would like to provide comment.
Okay. Hi, Tina.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. I just wanted to congratulate Sarah Flax on her new position. And I would also like to know who's going to be substituting for Sarah Flax now that she's moved up.
Good question. I think Sarah's just not going to sleep at night. She's going to just keep working really hard.
We're working on additional hiring and other plans to fill up some of the gaps in many parts of the city right now.
Exactly.
Hiring is a challenge, but we will have some new announcements in the near future.
Right. Any other comments for us, Tina?
Surprisingly, no. I'm sure you're surprised, but no, I don't.
Okay, well, next time. Then I think that's all the business to come before us this evening. So thank you very much, everyone. Our next meeting is September. I don't remember. I didn't look it up.
20th.
October 20th.
Okay, so we'll see you all next month. And in the meantime, be well and carry on all the good work. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Everyone. Good night.
Good night, everybody.